Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Jekyll Geek's RPG Realm. If you watched my last video, you will have noted that I recently went to a gaming convention, namely the Dragonflight convention that occurs yearly, and in the city of Bellevue, which, if you don't know Bellevue, it is the city just directly east of Seattle. There, I did play three other games, and you can learn about more of that in the What I Learned from Dragonflight video. But I also ran, as in game mastered, a game of DC20 for rather newish players, and I found it ran out as a rather smashing success. However, the most important thing I'd like to say about that game is that I was not able to bring a gridded map to this game, whereas I usually play online either through Foundry or Roll20. But my limited ability to bring stuff to the convention forced me to play this game, what is called Theater of the Mind. What is Theater of the Mind, you ask? It is basically whatever you have to do when you're running RPG combat and you don't have stuff like grid or actual minis or terrain or stuff like that. LDC20 is a system that prefers to use a grid for some of its more minutia-based combat. That not only through this given session of the game, but a previous session when I had difficulties loading Foundry for my players, and another one-shot game I played on the West Marches server of DC20 finally proves that this game can be run entirely through Theater of the Mind. How does one do stuff like ranges and distances in Theater of the Mind? The most common way, which is through other games I play like Shadow Dark or Daggerheart, is to use something called range bands. And given the particulars of DC20, I figured out these particular range bands. First one is I called the touch range, would equate to the melee range, which you can attack someone through either your fists or a sword or the similar short melee weapon. Second being the what I call spear range, which you can attack someone with a long range melee weapon, such as a spear, a whip, or a polearm. This would be the equivalent to very close range in Daggerheart. The third range is what I would call throne range, which would be the short or the range which you do not get a accuracy penalty for using a basic thrown weapon like a thrown dagger or a thrown rock. This is the equivalent range of spending one action point to run to or from an enemy. This would be the equivalent to, say, close range in Daggerheart or Shadow Dark. However, given the AP system in DC20, movement is a bit different. As if you want to, you can spend all four of your action points to run a fairly big distance across a map. The fourth range is something I would call the spell range, as spells such as the firebolt or sacred bolt only have a range of 10 spaces. This is also the range of longer range thrown weapons such as a javelin, but as stuff like cantrips are the bread and butter of pretty much half your party, I decided to go with the name spell range. This being the range that takes about 2 AP to cross in normal circumstances. The fifth range that I would mention is what I call bow range, which is the short or distance without attack penalty for most weapons, such as a sling or a short bow. This distance takes 3 action points to cross if you're running normally. Sixth distance I'd call is far range, which takes more range and would be the range you can attack with a ranged weapon such as a short bow or sling or crossbow with a attack penalty, or the distance that you can use a longbow at normal penalty, which takes 6 AP to cross. And as you only have 4 AP, it would take more than a round, even if you were only moving. That is all well and good for basic movement, but several classes have special abilities that modify movement. And here's how I would deal with those classes in Theater of the Mind. The first being the Barbarian, which has a special charge ability under their Berserker talent that they receive at level 1. How I would handle this would be giving the Barbarian a special ability called the Barbarian Charge that is only usable in Theater of the Mind. What this is was that if the Barbarian spends 2 action points, they can move to someone in spell range and make a melee attack as normal. I'm giving them more of a benefit of the doubt with as opposed to most characters, as a barbarian would naturally have the ability to move 8 of movement if they were spending 1 AP to move, then 1 AP to attack, which would be the amount that most creatures within quote unquote spell range would be. Ability that I would like to mention is actually 2 abilities: the monk's wolf stance and the spellblade discipline, the blink blade. But they would handle just about the same, except for the fact that the monk gets a opportunity attack at disadvantage when they move away. However, that is exactly the same as it would be in gridded combat. Well, what I would do in this circumstances is when the character of either class is using this ability, they can move to melee range from spear range back to spear range if they're in melee range when they started the attack. Ability that I would like to address is the Rogue's Cunning Action ability, which allows them to make a half move when they perform certain actions, such as trying to hide, cause a feint, or engage, as well as trying to dodge if you're a swashbuckler subclass. How I would handle this is to allow the rogue to move from or to throne range from melee range, but only be able to do this once per turn, as not to abuse the ability by taking multiple cunning actions and thus moving faster by Theater of the Mind movement. Next is the Druid Domain ability, which is a very tricky ability, as you're allowed to create 8 squares of special plant growth for your Druid abilities. How I would handle that is simply adjudicate it the same way you would Burning Hands, as I've realized that, say, the cone version of Burning Hands only has 8 squares of effect, and you could also use it as a straight line if you want to ensnare someone in your Druid domain at spell range. However, it would only affect melee range if you wanted to create a ring around yourself. This is how I would handle just about all of the basic abilities that would interfere with normal movement in DC20, using a Theater of the Mind setup. I was thinking of creating a second video which would explain you could adjudicate a speed penalty or bonus in the system, but that is far more in the weeds adjudication, which I have not completely worked out yet. But I will come back to this topic at a later date when I've figured out more how to deal with speed penalties and bonuses in Theater of the Mind combat. Thank you, and this has been Jekyll Geek's RPG Realm, and have a good day.